Mo, I appreciate you jumping on. This is going to be just a real quick one because I've been. It's about the Senator Alex Padilla out of California incident that occurred.
Right.
And I tried it. This is not a political thing. I don't care. He's a Democrat. None of that matters. But I haven't heard a good clarification as to what happened and why it happened and all the reasons that are getting spun up in the media and politically. It's driving me crazy. So this is one of those few things where this is going to be like a real short one, but it's a response to what happened, why it happened, and address some of those things. So we were kind of talking, for those who don't know or are unaware at this point, Senator Alex Padilla, I'm going to say, barged in while Secretary Kristi Noem, head of DHS, who has Secret Service protection, was giving, I'm going to call it a private press briefing. There is a difference. It doesn't really matter, but she was talking to the press by herself in a room answering questions. These things happen all the time. Political, people do this all the time. It's not out on the street. It's not open to the public to just barge right in. Senator Padilla comes in and starts yelling questions over the press, approaching Secretary Noem. I'm not saying he was hostile or there was a threat, but there is a decorum that has to be maintained, because the one thing Secret Service, we protect you from hurt and harm, but also embarrassment. So we can't let people just run around screaming, throwing, whatever it is, right? Even if they're not going to be injured, we're not going to allow that kind of behavior. Nobody knew who he was. He wasn't wearing his pen. He wasn't identified. And I'm going to address this. It doesn't matter even if he was, because you still can't do that. You don't act that way, period, the end. Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. And he's just yelling and screaming at her. And then I got to rewatch the video. I'm not sure if it was Secret Service or not. But anyway, he was grabbed by the arms, led out of the room. Multi-pronged thing, and Mo, fill it in if I start rambling. One, the fact that he wasn't wearing anything to identify himself. People do this on the regular. They'll say, I have a meeting with the president. I'm a congressman of this. I'm a this. The Secret Service doesn't know every single senator by face or by name, let alone every congressman, but we'll stick with senators for this point, for this conversation. We don't know them all. They change, right? So that's number one. So we don't know who you are. You're coming into an enclosed meeting and you start yelling and screaming. We're going to address the issue. Second, he says that he was, I've heard he was slammed on the ground and detained and all this stuff. He was not slammed on the ground. He was handcuffed. He was it's called passive resistance, where he didn't want to comply. He wanted to get his questions heard. He seemed, insulted and affronted that he was even being touched, which is asinine. They figured out who he was. They assessed that he is really who he says he is. He's not a threat to the protectee. And then from my readings, he went through the proper channels and had a sit-down meeting with Kristi Noem, and they had a conversation, which is what should have happened in the beginning. But let me back it all the way up, because that's usually where it stops. One side saying, well, we didn't know who he was. It doesn't fucking matter. Even if everybody knew who he was, you can't just run up on a protectee and start yelling and screaming, whether it's questions or not. That is not the time or the place, right? You set up a meeting. There's proper channels. Everybody has proper channels. There's a million fucking staffers. DC, everybody knows everybody. If you want to get in touch with somebody and you're in that field, you know how to do it.
Right.
Doing it while they're in the middle of an event with Secret Service around you is not the time for you to go act like an asshole. Once again, I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, it would happen. The same things would happen. So even if everybody knew he was supposed to be there or allowed to be there or whatever the phraseology is, you still can't do that. I can tell you from my own personal experience, I've been inside the DNC or the RNC or the Capitol or the White House, whatever it is. People can't just walk in because I'm a congressman, I'm a senator. I will stop them and say, who are you? Do you have an appointment? Do they know you're coming? And if the answer is no, turn around and go that way. 99.999% of the time they go, they might get pissy or huffy, but they do the right things. They're not going to try to barrel roll through the Secret Service. But on a handful of times, especially when you're inside like a DNC or an RNC, that's usually like Congress people, and I think it's only Congress people. I don't know if senators have offices, but that's kind of their building, right? They have offices there. They're used to walking around. I can remember a time where the Vice President, Harris at the time, we were in the DNC, had slated time to record campaign stuff like that, and some congressman was walking around the hallways on his phone, just all loud on speakerphone. She was like an hour out, and I said, sir, the Vice President's coming. When she's here, I need you to move. You can't be doing this. In no world will we ever allow this. Yeah, I know who she is. I'm a congressman. I said, I can appreciate that. Unless you talk to her staff, I need you to leave when she gets here. I didn't stop him or anything like that. Time comes, she's 5 minutes out. I said, sir, I need you to move. I will say again, once again, nothing physical happened, nothing like that. But he was just like, I know who she is. I'll say hi, whatever. I said, no, you're not. And I had to get assertive and say, I need you to leave. And if you want to talk to her, have your whoever reach out to her, figure that out. But you're not just going to be there at the elevator when they'll say, oh, hey, how you doing? That's not how any of this goes. That's not how it works. That's not how any security plan works. He was pissy, to say the least. She comes. I told the 15, which is, the boss at the time, this is what happened. Thing unprofessional happened. There's witnesses everywhere. I said, but this is what was going on. Right. Did you put hands on him? I did not put hands on him because but let me tell you something. If he wouldn't have left, I would have. I would have escorted his ass down the hallway and be like, don't let him move. Once again, it's not a power. It's not necessarily a power thing, but the Secret Service, if you were given Secret Service protection, whether it's the president, the vice president, a cabinet member, head of a department, that is your priority over and above any other priority. Right. You can't I don't care what elected official you are. You can't just barge your way into someone's office. It doesn't go that way. Right. And I can tell you, even on Trump's detail, when he was in Mar-a-Lago his first term, senators, congresspeople, local, state officials would just show up and want to meet with Trump. No, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. And there would be pissy conversations. Once again, I'm trying to remember. I have never encountered I had an experience where I had to put hands on a senator or a congresspeople, but these things do happen. And the way it's getting blown out of proportion, and the reason I'm a little pissy is because now they're calling for a full investigation. They want to put these agents on, on administrative leave or investigate. And it's like they did exactly what they're supposed to.
Right. And I will say that it should be incumbent upon the leaders of the Secret Service to step out and say that, because it does not matter political affiliation. If I have a directive as a law enforcement officer and they are an arm of enforcement, you have that directive. I don't care who you are. Like I told you before, I was never Secret Service, but I was a local that was used to augment Secret Service, and I didn't care what president we were protecting or what candidate that had protections that we were there to assist with. My stress level was the same because I had a job to make sure this person was alive when they left. And that's, to me, I would think that's the same ideology that the individuals that are on the details have as well. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter who the person is they're protecting. They have a job to protect that person, and they're going to execute that job against whoever they come up against. So I can tell you the videos that I watched, several of the reporters that were talked to, they haven't talked to actually the agents, but several of the reporters said, who have been in California, who some of them are even local, said, I did not recognize him as the senator first and foremost. So while it doesn't matter, this is, for all intents and purposes, a strange person barging into a interview that is going on that's supposed to be private, quasi-private, or whatever you want to call it at that point, and trying to address the protectee. And that's what it boils down to. So like or not how it was handled, understand this is why it was handled that way, and there's no reason to call forth a investigation or anything like that. You can not like how it was done, but it doesn't mean it wasn't done right.
Yeah, and what investigation? It's all on tape.
Right.
You saw what happened. And threats are real. You just had that local official, him and his wife were assassinated in Minnesota. Yeah. And they're elected officials, they'll never do that. You just had a congresswoman get arrested for assaulting I believe an ICE agent or a border patrol, I can't remember, at a detention facility. Yeah. Yes, it is. And I can tell you on Harris's side, she would have large-scale speaking events with congresspeople, and some of them had to be escorted out, not by Secret Service, by staff, because they wanted to posture, throw up signs, start screaming over her. Once again, that's not the time or the place to do that, but they're just grandstanding for whatever reason. Again, these are all different incidents that occurred, but it's irritating the shit out of me because it's going a little bit beyond just normal politics where you disagree with something someone's saying. Like now you're trying to make it seem like the Secret Service is like Shylarkin for the government, which is insane.
I will say the video, one of the ones that I watched too, it was actually the video that his aides recorded, and it showed it from behind him perspective. Yep. I didn't think that he was handled very rough at all. They did escort him out. As he tried to turn and come back a couple times, they made sure that he went out. And then when he went out into the hallway, his aides recorded. They said, go to your knees, go down to your belly. He was kind of on his side and would not go to his belly. And they were like, give me your hands. But to me, handled super appropriately, in my opinion, based on their directives. They were there to protect the protectee, and what they were doing was just that. And they were super still, because at one point he does, after they originally put hands on him, he says, "I'm Senator," and he goes, "I'm a senator," and then he says his name. So I think they were still there at that point to be like, okay, we're not going to just dump him, like, but I think that there has to be some accountability on his part with knowing the decorum of how it should be done and understanding that you can't come in with that level of aggression and expect not to be met with some level of aggression. I will say he did a press conference out on the steps later on, and he was very, very adamant to be clear, and I got the impression almost he was told to make sure he says these things. I was not arrested. I was not detained. I was handcuffed. Like, he used those words, and so I don't know if someone said, make sure you say it this way. But he even clarifies that it wasn't an arrest, it wasn't a detention. They did handcuff him. He just didn't indicate that the handcuffing was warranted based on the response to him.
His status as a senator, which, once again, I'm going to just, a couple things. The initial incident happens. Keep in mind, Secret Service has no idea who this guy is. And I'm going to just say, even if they did, still doesn't matter, in my opinion. They didn't know who he was. Some dude just busting up in there yelling and screaming at their protectee. He's lucky he didn't get fucking dumped, because, once again, a few days prior to that, they had somebody get assassinated.
Right.
The shit is real, right?
It is.
The threats against the protectees is fucking real. And then the way they, again, de-escalate. But again, what I'll say is they didn't do all that because he started to somewhat comply. I say passively resist because he didn't want to do it, right? He was pushing back. He didn't want to go. He's doing his... That's passive. It's not, he wasn't swinging at anybody. Good on his part, because he would have got his ass done. But even if you are, hey, that is Senator Alex Padilla. We know who that guy is. And he's yelling and he's pushing and he wants to cut. Dude, you're going to get your ass dumped and handcuffed. You cannot do that. It doesn't matter. Just because you're an elected official doesn't mean you can just start, thumping cops and federal aid. No, it doesn't work that way. And again, he did not do that. I'm not trying to say he did, but this whole, they didn't know who he was. I'm telling you, even if they did know who he was, they still did the appropriate action. And honestly, I have nothing but just watching them. I didn't know those agents specifically, but very professional. I don't know. I've tried to tell people this before. Secret Service do all this training, and 99% of our job is standing around in suits. Our feet hurt, our legs hurt, our back hurts. We're waiting for the next thing, the next movement, whatever. But we are super honed in on. We are if somebody crosses that line, all my training gets to be unleashed, kind of a thing, right? So it's not that you want anything to happen. A good day is when nothing happens. But if it does, it's almost like finally, boom, and you get to do that. So the fact that they didn't do that is, nothing but kudos to them. Right.
I definitely agree with you.
I will say this: we used to joke, and this is probably not a good joke, but we used to what would happen if two protectees decided they wanted to go at it? How would that work?
I mean, it's a draw at that point.
I was like, well, it depends on who's winning, I guess. No, anyway, I'm sorry. Poor taste, but we used to talk about these things. I wonder how would you handle that? Yes, Mo, thank you. I know this is a quick one, but I wanted to get it out there.
No, interesting. I'm glad that we did put something out about it, because I think it is important to not get wrapped around the axle of the politics and not just look at it for what it is.
You know what? Let me just say this too. You and I are good friends, and you and I know each other. If I, whatever reason, went out my mind and just walked up in your house and started yelling and screaming at Frank, or my God, let alone your son, I would assume, correctly, you would jack my ass up. And you know exactly who I am. Now, take it out that it's some rando that you may be an acquaintance. Bro, you lucky,
ain't gonna make it out.
You lucky.
He ain't gonna make it out.
Well, yeah, again, this is a house. It's a little different setting, but I'm just saying it doesn't matter. Right. You know you or not. You can't act like that. That's crazy.
You still can't act like that. That's the thing. You live and learn, I guess. And the other thing, too, I want to say is people, you can't downplay what just happened in Minnesota. That has to put everybody on edge about the political, that's in the political world and has the charge of protecting politicians. So, wild.
Wild shit. Thank you, Mo. I appreciate it.
Of course, man. See you on the next one.
All right. Bye.